Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I'm joined again today by the beautiful, amazing Jessianna Saville from the Kidney Nutritional Institute. And she has, as you probably know, joined us to talk about all things to eat for dinner if you have kidney disease. We've covered lunch and breakfast. So if you haven't watched those videos, make sure you go down to the videos below and have a look at those. But we thought today we would cover dinner because it's probably the biggest meal of the day, right? And the one that everybody celebrates with family and the one that's got more tradition and ceremony and those sort of things around it. So it's often the one that people spend more time preparing and a bit more, I don't know, people are more attached to dinner, aren't they, than other meals? I don't know why that is.
Yeah, it is very interesting. So yeah, dinner is it's a good learning meal, and it is the place where most people gather with their families. And so I just think it's such an important meal to be able to get some great ideas on, because it really, for a lot of people, seems to like make or break their plan for nutrition. Because if they can't make it work with their family, or like everyone else is cooking something else, eventually it ends up being really, really tough for them.
That is so true. And so that is definitely something we should cover, because I find this in my MS patients too. They're like, well, we're in control for breakfast and lunch, but dinner, the wife's cooking or the husband cooks. So I've got children. I don't want to make 5 or 6 different meals. So I think that's where, like you say, it's why people fall off the bandwagon. So let's start from the beginning, and then we will address some of these things. So walk us through, Jess, what are the sort of things that you are recommending to your patients in clinical practice that they try and eat for dinner?
Perfect. Great question, Fiona, and thanks for letting me be here today. So when it comes to dinner, we start kind of like, if you pull back and if you see this same principles we talk in our videos, we really like to start by using a very alkaline diet. So it's something that you guys talk about also in your book. But using an alkaline diet is so, so important, which means that it's very heavy on fruits and vegetables. So in the United States, a few years ago, they switched from like the pyramid to, I don't know, they had some other something or other, I never could understand it, to the plate. And in the plate, they have like half the plate is produce, like fruits and vegetables. And I really like thinking, I actually really love the plate method, where you think about your plate and you're really getting heavy on fruits and vegetables. So for us, people, at least in the United States, and I think in many developed countries, we tend to think about dinner first from a meat standpoint, actually. When you're planning meals, you think, okay, well, like what are we going to have for dinner? Okay, tonight we're going to have chicken. Tonight
100%,
we're going to have
you're so right.
beef. Tonight we're going to have steak. So most people are used to thinking of their meals from the meat standpoint. And when you're shifting towards a kidney-friendly diet, we're wanting to shift towards thinking about those vegetables and those produce and those plant-based foods first. And so for us, one of the easiest way to switch out of like the meat for dinner mindset, whatever you want to call it, meat for dinner mindset, is to think about familiar meals that are already based on having less meat, or they're based on having a lot of vegetables. And so one of those meals that we use, and we have a whole list, we call it the less meat meals, and I can talk about that in a minute, but one of those meals that we really like to work from is stir fry, because there's so many amazing nutrition principles just within the principle of learning a stir fry.
So I know you have this amazing handout that you just showed me. So do you want to walk us through that? Because I think I just love the tools that you give your patients. I just, the salad and the smoothie, and now we're on to, stir fry for dinner. I just love how you've put this together. So walk me through that, Jess.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so we teach stir fry as one of, when people are like, I'm just not sure what to do. One of the things we really like to do at Kidney Nutrition Institute is take the nutrient principles, right? Alkaline diet is vague. It's hard for people to understand and bring it actually down to food. So stir fries are amazing, and I'll show you why. Is that not only are they very simple, and you look at this, you're like, whoa, like it's a ton of ingredients, but I'm going to explain it to you. Stir fries are very simple because for people that don't want to cook, you literally can do them without any prep. You can buy a bag of frozen vegetables and that's all that you need. So they're very simple for people that don't want to prep. They're a great way to get rid of extra vegetables. People are like, I bought all these vegetables, they go to waste. Not anymore. If you know how to stir fry, you can use up all your vegetables every week. but mostly they teach so many amazing principles for the kidneys. And so I can show you a little bit what I mean by that. So for us, when we look at stir fries, we always think about it in 3 sections. We think you need to have some sort of a good like sauce, like some sort of a flavor, right? Some sort of an aromatic, which gives it that really great stir fry flavor. So you don't feel like you're eating boring food. And then obviously vegetables, right? Like these are the big principles of putting a stir fry together. When you're cooking a stir fry, or really when you're cooking anything, you always want to heat your pan and then put your oil or whatever you're using in there next.
Mhm.
So here's just a couple examples. So this is a basic sauce recipe if somebody wants to use like a sauce. And these, I just mix them all together, and that's all that needs to happen. So
Oh,
just
yeah.
mix all these together in a pan, and then I just let it cook, and it makes kind of a nice stir fry sauce. Sometimes I don't make sauce at all. You can also use, if you want kind of a sweeter stir fry, then sometimes I'll use like the pineapple juice that I used, or a little bit of like a little bit of brown sugar in there. I don't love like super sweet stir fry, so I'd rather use like a little bit of coconut aminos, which are lower salt than soy sauce. Or, maybe I'd use a tiny bit of soy sauce, a little bit of vinegar, a little bit of lime juice, that sort of thing. But here's where it gets really, really fun. So if you look down here, here's how we cook it. Get your pan, it's hot, put some oil in there, and then choose some sort of we call them aromatics, something with good flavor. None of these are expensive, right? These are cheap things. They're already familiar. I mean, you can even buy onions already chopped up in the freezer section, and you just dump them in. Like, you don't even have to chop onions and make your eyes cry. So, but any of these are really good. I love garlic. I love onions. So we use them a lot. I love ginger. I love ginger. I'm trying to grow a ginger plant. I love ginger so much, and I just grate it in. I don't even worry about peeling this knobbly little thing. I just grate it in my stir fry, and then I'll let it cook in my oil for just a minute. One thing that you'll notice here, and I was thinking about Kygenesis a little bit, but a lot of these are really kidney happy herbs, right? These are kidney happy products like ginger
Wow.
and garlic, things that are so great just for your health overall. Like they're a functional food, right? They have extra benefits besides just tasting good.
And yeah, ginger's highly anti-inflammatory, garlic's antimicrobial, like so many great things there just in those two.
Yeah. So we start with this, just get it in your oil just for a second so that you start smelling it. And then we add in some vegetables. Now we put a list here, don't obviously use all of these, but we put a list of different vegetables here. And when I work with a patient, or if you're watching this now, you can look at this and maybe jot down, or if I'm working with the patient, we have them circle ones that they like and that they're familiar with. And that's what they're going to put in their stir fry. So I love when I make stir fry. I actually really love putting bok choy in a stir fry. I think it's so, so delicious.
Yeah.
We often have zucchini and carrots at my house. We'll put those in too. I have a collard plant that will never, ever die, ever. It just like live forever, will never die. So I'll chop collards up at the end and put them in as well. But you can see that there's tons of different ones that you can choose, and you just chop it up and put it in your oil with your aromatics, and then you just start mixing it in that hot environment so it can start cooking.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's one way. So now you're gonna have this. I mean, I use a wok. Some people will just use like a cast iron skillet if you're getting a little bit more iron, or something smaller. But I use a wok, and so I'm cooking all my vegetables. I have so many vegetables in there from the beginning. Like this is a vegetable-based dish. Like it's so alkaline, so many great things you can put in it. If I'm really in a hurry, and this is my like backup, I don't have time to cook sort of plan, I actually just keep like a bag of frozen vegetables, and I'll do the exact same thing. I do sesame seed oil, a little bit of garlic and ginger, and then I just pour that bag of frozen vegetables in, and we'll cook it up really quick.
Nice.
So that's what we do. If we want to add something a little bit of extra, because right now there's not any protein in this, and you do need to have some you need a little bit from your vegetables. For my patients that are totally plant-based, I'll have them in cashews, or if they're watching oxalates, we'll do sunflower seeds or pepitas. But you can add in some nuts, which tastes really super great with your stir fry. Some people that are just having less meat in their diet, they'll just do a little bit of chicken in there and they'll feel like they have this dish with still like meat in it that they really like, but not as much. It's not that same, like I have a piece of meat at my meal, but they have a chicken stir fry, which has less. We've converted many people to trying tofu by just stir frying it. And so that can be another great one as well. So, the other piece, I guess I just would note here, these are our steps to walk through it. How do you put these in? You know, obviously put your harder, tougher things in first to cook. So carrots take a little bit longer than Napa cabbage, which is soft, and you just kind of get a hang of it after a while. But a couple of things is at the end, the last way to make it pop, and it doesn't take a lot of time. It's a great way to add in some, especially minerals and extra nutrients, is you can either add in some fresh herbs. So sometimes people like to use Thai basil, or they'll just put a little parsley or green onions in there. It makes the color really pretty. I really like to use sesame seeds. I think they're a good source of calcium. They're a great mineral source. So I'll put them in there, and the nuts we talked about. And then sometimes we'll do a little bit of mandarin orange or a little bit of pineapple in there too, which can give it like the sweet, salty sort of flavor, which is really, really tasty.
Yeah, that sounds
good. Yeah, so I mean, if you want a visual, here's what your dinner could look like.
wow.
So simple, and you can put it over, some people put it over rice. If you're watching carbohydrates, you can put it over shirataki noodles or cauliflower rice. I mean, there's so many, you can use it over rice noodles, so many different ways to kind of mix it up quite a bit. But yummy food that is actually really, really easy to cook.
Yeah, it's so easy. I mean, that's the great thing about stir fries, right? Is they're basically a fried salad, really, in some ways, aren't they?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, a fried salad. Yeah.
And you get more of your veggies. And it's a great way, if we look at how you covered breakfast, which is the smoothie and the berries and the fruit and the nuts and some nut butter and things like that. And then we've moved on to lunch, which is that beautiful way that you layered your salad. So more of the leafy greens, and then, dinner. And if you're looking at that, people are going to be getting anywhere from 4 to 6 serves of fruit and vegetables a day, which is so amazing. And such a great way to get variety, because what you do in your salad will be different, or your soup maybe for lunch will be different to what you do in your stir fry. It's alkaline the whole way through. You've got basically no processed foods in there. Well, you've got none, if we're looking at it all. And so imagine having and following what we've gone through over these last sort of couple of weeks, and having that every day. Like, how could you not feel well with that? How much that's going to feed your system and your cells. And we're just a big bag of cells, right? And so whatever we eat is what feeds them. So I think I just look at that, and I know I look at a healthy stir fry like that, my whole body goes, oh, yes, please.
It is, and it's colorful and it's pretty, and like it tastes good. Like, and you can play around with the flavors a little bit, and I think it can work for really everybody.
I agree. And like you mentioned, and I want to reiterate it, it's very fast to cook. The great thing now, and I'm going to get you to speak to this point, is we've got children, we've got a husband that eats a lot of meat and things like that. But with that, you can have a piece of meat on the side that you can then, if they're eating a little bit of that, you can cut up half a steak and chop a little bit and add it to their stir fry. And you don't have to have it, and the children can have that too. But I want you to speak to that point where you have people saying, look, I'm sick, my husband works, or I'm sick, my wife works full time, and I come home and I've got to feed the kids, and I've got to feed my wife and things like that, and I don't have the energy, and I've got to cook 3 different meals. How do you reconcile that in families where people have got different food needs, using still the base so people can eat well? Because, as we mentioned, dinner is the meal that's most likely to derail someone's healthy eating habits, and then with dessert, as we call it in Australia, or supper after that, it then can spiral. So walk me through that.
That is really, man, this is such an important question. It's probably the number one piece truly that we are strategizing with people to help nutrition change from a diet to a lifestyle is, how do we make this work in life? I mean, that's lifestyle, right? How do you really make your nutrition work in lifestyle? So a couple different things to unpack here. So number one is, if you're looking at someone who has to go it alone, right? No one's going to really help them in the kitchen, and they just have to be on their own. There's a couple different strategies we'll give them. So number one is, they can, if they have, a Saturday or Sunday or weekday, they can meal prep their own meals for the week. And that way, no matter what the family's eating, they can still sit down with them and enjoy the meal, but they can eat their own food. So that's one thing they can do, just depending on their family structure. If they're the person who also cooks for the family, and they're like, I'm not going to cook for me, and I'm not going to cook for, spouse and kids also, like, I just need one meal that works for everyone, then we'll talk about how you like the commonalities in meals. And we just actually wrote a blog post about this. It'll be going up pretty soon, but how do you look for commonalities? So a commonality in like a stir fry meal is, everyone can eat like all those cooked vegetables that were done. The non-commonality may be that your spouse wants to have steak, right? And your kids maybe really like to eat, the steak too, or they want to have like that meat portion. So you can either cook it in there, and then you just like pick it out and put it on someone else's plate or whatever you want. Or a lot of times what we'll do is we'll say, hey, like, your spouse or whoever, they really want to eat meat. So why don't one night a week you guys cook like a meat-based meal, but cook a lot of it, and you can put it in the fridge, and you can slice it up and use it at other meals, and they can just add it to their meals. And that's so easy to do. So that's number two, is we say, like, what are the commonalities? What part of the cooking process can everyone share? The third part is, talking, and not everyone has a supportive family this way, but a lot of people do, is say, hey, a plant focused diet, or this kind of plant focused dinner, it really can work for everyone in our family. So will you just try it with us? And I know in my family with my kids, they don't always like everything we cook. And my rule is just like, you have to try a bite. And then, like, if you don't eat it, like, you can have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or like, you can have something, you can have your own thing, but like, I'm going to cook things that are good for everybody, and eventually you'll get used to it. But you can also just have people experience what you're working on, and in a supportive environment. I honestly feel like that's really kind of an adventure and exciting for everyone, and everyone will get involved. The one thing is, for busy families, they have to recognize there's a little bit of this learning curve. So it might be a week or two. You got to find a couple new things you like. So those are three basic things. You can either, one, cook your own separate meals in a batch, have your own separate freezer meals if that's the only way it's going to work for you. Number two, you can find the commonalities, and really the only thing that's not common is a lot of salt or a lot of meat. Everything else is the same, right? People can salt their own food at the table, so you don't have to worry about that. And the meat can usually just be cooked to the side, or you can pick it out. So that would be number two. And then number three would be, get your family on board, and then everyone can kind of cook and eat the same meals. And yeah.
And do you ever get, because I know, when I was working with my MS patients, and a lot of them have to do, probably like you find, massive dietary changes, taking out gluten and dairy, and getting these, 9 cups of vegetables a day and things like that. I'd often bring the partners in and walk them through why we're doing it and the benefit to them, to get them on board, because, education's power and things like that. Have you found that having it come from you versus a spouse helps? How have you found, because obviously when they eat that way, they're actually going to improve their own health. So,
oh yeah,
have you found, and the same with the kid, children are super smart. If you tell them that broccoli is going to make them grow up big and strong, there seems to be a proclivity for them wanting to try it more. Have you found any tricks around that, because you do a lot more nutritional coaching than I probably do in clinic. Like, have you found something that really works, or a way for a partner to explain this to their partner to help them get on board?
Yeah, so there's actually two ways that this partnership works. It's either someone who has kidney disease, we're actually working with their spouse who's concerned about them. And they're kind of like, like, if I have to do it, I'll do it. And they're like, this is going to change our life. So, like, you have to do this. And in that case, where we have the person without the disease who has the most concern, we actually coach a lot on making sure that the relationship is a cheerleading relationship, not a policing relationship. So that's the first thing, where it's like, let's talk about why we're doing these things, and then how do we bring as many choices as possible in, and you're going to have to let a little bit go of the control, right? And most often people want to especially control and tighten down when they're scared. And so it's talking
Yes.
about, here's how much we can flex it. So that's one situation. On the other side, where there is someone who says, I want to take control of my situation. I know nutrition can help. And my spouse is not supportive at all. Like, they think I'm a crazy person, whatever. In that case, we have two options. If we can get the spouse to come in as part of the session, then we'll talk about, successes that we've had in the past. And we'll talk about, here's what this thing is going to change. And it's probably not as hard as you think. Because again, when there's resistance, 99% of the time is based in fear.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of something that will be gone from their life, whether it's a food or something, but there's usually a fear. And once you can kind of pick through and figure out that fear of what's going on, then people tend to come together, and they at least can, mutually agree that we'll work on this the best way we can. So, I mean, honestly, for us, it's coming down to what's the main fear. And then number two, what are the benefits? And then I'll tell you the other thing that's really the clincher is we like to put a time frame. So we say, I know this is unusual. Are you willing to try it for 6 weeks? Because you're going to get your wife or your husband or whoever, in 6 weeks, they're going to get labs again. So let's do this for 6 weeks and see where things are at. And then we'll reassess the situation and, see if this is working or not. Do we need to shift gears? When you can put a time frame on an effort and it doesn't feel endless, it's so much easier to focus and to just be able to delay maybe some gratification, or just feel like it's not forever and ever and ever. Let's see where this goes, and then we'll take the next step. But shrinking the time frame back from forever is so crazy helpful for us. I just think that's a really powerful tool.
Yeah, I agree. You definitely making people feel like it's not forever makes a big difference, especially for the person who doesn't have the disease. So, no, I think that's great. Thank you for addressing that, because I think that's something that's really important, and something that, especially dinner time, where people, like we mentioned, it's a thing coming together. It can be such a big obstacle in people making positive change. And as we know with kidney disease, it really has to be every meal of the day. It's 2 out of 3 in some ways isn't good enough when you've got advanced kidney disease to halt this thing in its tracks and lay the foundation for really good health. And I can't tell you, I don't know if you find this, that you'll get a patient coming in and they're like, yeah, we're eating well. And you go through it and they've got breakfast and lunch nailed. Dinner's not too bad. They've got most of it, but that's where you can start to see the stuff sneaking in, which then will lead to maybe a blood sugar spike, and then they're eating half a chocolate bar after dinner and things like that. And so, and then that, and I think this is a point that I want to reiterate, and I don't know if you feel the same, that when you've got a chronic disease, and it is very annoying, the small chinks in the armor where you are maybe putting too much salt on dinner, or you're suddenly going, I've eaten so many vegetables during the day, half a steak at dinner won't matter, or a pizza twice a week is fine because I'm tired. But when you've got a chronic disease, those little things do matter, because we're not turning off the inflammatory process, or we're not dealing with the diabetes like we should. And I think sometimes people don't realize it's that that snowball contributive effect of, unfortunately, every meal stacks on top of itself, and a little chink when you've got chronic disease can undo all the good work that you've done.
Yeah, I think there's two ways that we'll address this. Is number one, it's easy for a small thing to become a regular thing.
Yes.
And when a small thing, and it doesn't feel like a regular thing. And I have experienced this personally. And I always like to go back to my experience when doing a ketogenic diet and coming into ketosis as a clinician. This is a therapy we use. And it's very apparent that your little choices impact you when you're looking at ketosis. And I noticed for me, I was like, oh, like, it's not really a big deal. Like, I'll just do this or that or whatever. And that did make a big difference in how I felt and, staying in consistent ketosis. When it comes to, back to your point, when it comes to a chronic disease, there's two ways that we balance this out for people. Is number one, I find that for many people, not everybody, but many people work well with absolutes. And so we say, like, let's not create a lot of gray area. Some people do super great with gray area. I have one patient, she's done so well, PKD, dropping carbs, doing some fasting. And for her, she did really good with gray area, where she's like, like, I go to my sister's once a week, and like, I can't do this piece exactly right that we talked about. How bad is that going to be? Or like, what does this have to look like? And we're able to find like what the good compromise would be. But for other people, that absolute of it's either a yes or a no, and I'm more on that line, it's either yes or no, is very helpful because it gives me real structure into like what I'm pursuing. And it also doesn't give me any variables. So if I get labs in 6 or 12 weeks, I can't go back and say, oh, well, it wasn't good because I did XYZ, whatever. So that's where it fits. The other thing, though, is that, again, kind of going back to this forever principle, if there's room on occasion and you can understand when and where that is, to put something in that you really love, I think it makes things more doable as a lifestyle.
No, I definitely agree with that. But like your point was, I always say to patients, we can get dairy and gluten back in. Let's just reset the immune system. It might take 3 months, but if you're sick, stressed, run down, you won't touch it. It's when you're celebrating and you're feeling happy and, it's in this environment that's leading towards health and you're loving it, then, and, I often find people go, we went to have it, we didn't want it.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I was going to say that too, is that we'll say, okay, like when they'll say, for my birthday, my steak's my favorite thing. I'm going to pick on steak, right? I'm sorry. Steak's my favorite thing ever. And so we're going to do steak and mashed potatoes. And I really miss that. And they'll have been doing this beautiful alkaline plant focused diet, and they'll get to that special celebratory meal. And 9 times out of 10, everyone's welcome to say, it was just amazing. I say, great. I'm glad it was so good. But it's really interesting because 9 times out of 10 people say, you know what? I had it and I didn't enjoy it as much as I used to. I just think my tastes have shifted a little bit. And I actually really enjoyed, the vegetables that were with the meal. And I kind of wanted more of those. And I'm used to eating those now. So yeah, I mean, it honestly, lifestyle shift and nutrition shifts, it gets easier over time because your tastes shift over time. So
definitely, I can't even do like bottled sauces or things anymore because if they add a bit of sugar in there, because I just don't eat sugar, the taste is so overwhelming, as you'd probably find. Like, you don't like sweet sauces, I don't either. So it is amazing. And it is amazing. I think the more you eat this way, the more in tune with your body you become. And so people put something in their mouth that may be contributing towards disease or inflammation, and it's like they just know, and they're like, why would I want to eat this anymore, because I feel so good, and when I eat this I don't. And so yeah, that's another thing that I definitely notice with people as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to just add one little caveat to this, is that in some cases, so we do like food sensitivities to bring down inflammation. In some cases, truly the one choice, it's not like an end all of end all, but if we're working through like an elimination diet protocol or something that's very specific, and for people with autoimmune kidney disease, this is probably most relevant. You've cut out gluten or cut out dairy for a long time, or on some ways eliminated something, and you add some of it in. We have had some patients where it does create kind of a cascading spiral, and we're back almost to square one, not entirely, but we really take a lot of steps back from just one meal, and till you get to that place where you really have some healings. There are places, and this is where it's really great to have a good therapist. There are some times where you must truly be absolute, and other times there's room for some wiggle room here and there.
Yeah, and I think it's hard. That's a trial and error thing. Unfortunately, I've experienced where you get a patient really well and they have one meal and you are back to square one, and sometimes it can take twice as long to get them back again because the immune system's just gone crazy. But I agree to your point that that's where working with a practitioner is really important, because they will generally know that if you've done a food sensitivity test, just which part of the immune system was reacting and to what degree. And I think also, if you do have that, it's really important to have that support, because as a patient, that can feel just devastating to go back that far, but to know that you can get back there, and with the support of someone to help you with that sort of stuff. I've had a couple of patients where they've had a birthday and an old auntie that's in there like, a little bit won't hurt, and they've had it and they've just, they've gone back. But yeah, you can build them back up. But I think the hand holding and the reassurance that you can get them back to that point is really important. Otherwise, people can feel really despondent about that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add to any of that, Jessianna? I think that's been really great and given some people some
yeah. I mean, I think the other thing on dinner, I'll share this great kind of a great way we think about this for people that are switching toward a more alkaline diet, is we love to think about, and I'll give you some examples. I think beyond stir fry, I want to give kind of a breadth of other things people can use, but we like to use what we call them less meat meals. And so less meat meals are meals where meat doesn't have to be the star. So stir fries, what we just talked about. A couple other less meat meals that people are familiar with that they can utilize are things like tacos, for example, right? Tacos can have meat in them, but meat doesn't have to be the star. We should have tacos tonight, because there's so many other things that you build into a taco: lettuce, salsa, tomatoes, guacamole, whatever. So it doesn't have to be the star. So that's a less meat meal. Other less meat meals that people will use are pasta dishes. If people are using pasta, because you can have a lot of vegetables and you put it over a pasta and you don't need as much meat, right? In a pot, so you think like spaghetti and meatballs or spaghetti and meat sauce, you can put tons of vegetables in a sauce and just a tiny bit of meat if you need to cut back. So that's another good example. We've had some people do, if they really are valuing kind of these, what is the right word for it? Like comfort foods, like a chicken pot pie can have tons of vegetables in it and just little meat, or like quiche can have some egg in it and tons of vegetables in it. So these are what we call less meat meals, where you're not thinking of your plate as the steak, potato, and broccoli, but you're thinking like, what's a mixed meal where meat isn't the star? It's either used just as a flavor and I can swap it out for a plant-based item, or I just don't need to use as much and I can put a lot more vegetables in. So that's the only other thing when you're thinking about your meals. How can you shift to where the vegetables are the star and they're really the big shining place in your meal?
Yeah, no, that's great. And yeah, like you say, there's so many alternatives to be able to do that. Tacos, I think we just sent we're about to send an email out about a kidney-friendly taco recipe. So they are
look for that.
Yes, they are. They're very handy to use. So perfect. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up, Jessianna?
I don't think so. I think that no matter where you're at in your journey, though, if people need like a little bit of a boost of hope, there are ways to make it work. There really are. You can get past those pieces of whether it's my family's not supportive, I'm too busy, whatever. There are ways to make it work so that you can be successful without chronic disease ruling your life. Because we always say food should be part of your life, not your life. and it's something you want to control when you feel like other things are out of control. And it is so important to give time to it, because food is just, it's what nurtures our body. But it doesn't have to be everything in your life, and it can work no matter where you're at. So I mean, I really like, again, back to your point, this mindfulness practice of when you sit down to the meal, of thinking of that meal as nourishing you. If you can sit down to that meal, what are the pieces of this meal that nourish me, that bring me joy? And if you're still feeling frustrated with it, I mean, you can reach out to professionals. You guys have people in your practice, with people in our practice. We have worked through these things so many times. So we have tools built out that can help people get past that little hump so that they can feel successful and celebrate every meal instead of feel like it's a chore.
No, I think that's a really good point, because food is such a celebratory thing. That's, I think, how we associate it. But it is so nourishing. And so when you can get that balance right, people feel really very successful with their food. And then it has this beautiful snowball effect. So food is medicine, as Hippocrates, our father of medicine, would say. And so that's how, we want to really move into that paradigm where when you eat, I love it when I eat a good meal, because it feels like I'm eating medicine. And that's how I, like to eat my meals. So I think that's a great point. So if you are feeling like you want to work with a professional, Jessianna and her team can be found, and I'll put this in the show notes below, at the Kidney Nutritional Institute. They are all renal dietitians, very highly skilled and specialized. They think very much along the lines that we do in Kidney Coach. So I highly recommend them. They're not going to pop you on crazy renal diets that don't make sense. They're really good at digging into the other things that do make sense, that are proven, like, plant-based ketogenic diets, which most nutritionists don't know how to do well. Jessianna and her team are absolute experts around that. If you've got polycystic kidney disease, I highly recommend their team. They're very niched in that area, and they've got practitioners niched in different parts. I know you've got a mindset practitioner in there. I spoke to Lindsay earlier today about oxalates and things like that. So they've got this amazing team that have got some really great skills. So you can look at them online. They work remotely. You can do Zoom consults with them, or you can go in and see them in practice. Jessianna, thank you so much for joining me again. I know how busy you are, and I always appreciate your brilliant brain and mindset. And I know we'll have you back again to speak. I don't know. Are we on to desserts and snacks yet? What are we up to next? You'll have to
I think we're on snacks. Yeah, snacks and desserts. That definitely would be next.
Sounds perfect. I think lots of people want to know how to do that one, right? So that'll be good.
Yeah.
So as always, thanks again for joining us. If you want to be notified anytime we put up a new video, make sure you hit subscribe. If there's anything that you would like to ask Jessianna and her team for us to interview or talk about, you can put that in the comments below. If you want to know more about what we do, head to www.kidneycoach.com. You can also find us on Facebook in Facebook.com/Kidney Coach. Thanks again for being part of our community, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.